Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. Of course, we've known and seen for a while now the kind of unabated atrocities against Palestine that have continued by the Israeli forces. The women, the children continue to die even as we speak. The world, of course, the reaction that one would have hoped for, the humanitarian reaction that should follow when such atrocities happen anywhere in the world has unfortunately not happened. It seems we as collectively, the world has failed Palestine. We're going to talk about the ramifications of this escalating conflict. Is it possible that the people of Palestine and their suffering will end? Is it possible that the world will unite against this cause at all? All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Taiba Razak, who's a policy and HR expert. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Waqas Ali Khan, who is an IR expert. Thank you for joining us. And Faraz Ali Khan, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us. Overall, Taiba, as far as the reaction of the world is concerned, as far as all the forums in the world are concerned, as far as ICJ also is concerned, your overall estimation, do you think that the kind of reaction or no reaction, one has to say, that we've seen will continue and there is no end to this kind of merciless barbarity that is at play?
I think at the moment it is extremely devastating moment for international organizations and international laws that no international community is reacting on this. No one is responding for an immediate ceasefire, and I believe that this is the moment that we should stop. Okay, war is, when states go for war and invade a certain area, that does not mean that we do not have rules. There are certain rules for war. We cannot target civilians, we cannot target hospitals, we cannot target children, and since the invasion has started, if we continue looking at since October 7, if we see, we will note that more than 33,000 Palestinians have died. They lost their lives, including 14,000 children in it. And there is another report of UNICEF that says that more than 17,000 children have separated from their parents. So I think these are the war crimes that need to be addressed.
Fair enough. Ji, Waqas, of course, there's no true opinion on the fact that the war crimes need to be addressed, the kind of barbarity needs to stop. But as far as the world politics is concerned, do you think that, the kind of outpouring of reaction, that also is perhaps unparalleled? We've seen rallies in New York, we've seen London, we've seen across the board reaction of just civilians against what's happening. Do you think it's going to change anything at all?
Thank you for having me here. I guess there are two aspects to it. One is that if you see how the public civil society at large has reacted over the Palestinian issue, I guess the war of truth, if you say, which has come mostly from unconventional media, is largely won by Palestinians. I mean, people, civil society, human rights advocates, activists, and other sections of civil society have not only stood but also very emphatically spoke in the favor of people of Palestine, and they're still doing that. Number two, of course, this also indicates of larger political complications and structural issues in the world decision-making bodies. The problem right now is, if you see that General Assembly repeatedly has adopted a resolution asking for ceasefire, then many times it came into UNSC, and last when it was adopted in UNSC with US veto, didn't participate, abstain.
So that itself also shows a reaction from the original veto, right?
The problem is right now it's not implementing again. So this also, of course, compromised the overall legitimacy of the international overall processes. Now, there are different aspects to it. Of course, if you see the politics of Netanyahu, I mean, before this, even he had a massive challenge back home. The problem is he's still towards far-right extremist political parties over there, has created a constituency which is built on hate. Of course, the issue was there, but he was already in alliance with those parties. They are very much ultra-right parties. And then the incident of 7th of October happened, the way it unfolded. Now, if you see, there is a strong criticism that Israel is losing day by day its allies in the world. There is no justification what you are doing. It's against Geneva Convention of humanitarian law, international humanitarian law. You cannot besiege people and have a punitive action, and you cannot do. You have to. You cannot do this indiscriminate bombing between for combatants and non-combatants, and then children and others. So these are, of course, if you see in a broader picture, things are unfolding in a very difficult and complex way. The problem with right now in Palestinian is that, of course, there's a political problem for Netanyahu. If you see, he has no good chemistry now with Biden even. For that matter, there's a huge pressure mounting within US that you have to halt that supply of weapons. You cannot support such a regime which is blatantly violating the human rights of the people of Palestine. So it's very sad on the one side the way, I mean, this entire sort of massacre and genocide is happening. This is deplorable. But on the other side, if you see, I guess it's very difficult to sustain. And Israel as a country, if it has to exist, of course it requires some certain sort of allies. But allies don't have any justification to support right now.
Fair enough. Let me go to Faraz. Faraz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Faraz, we're talking about, if you were following, the fact that, the reaction of the world and the world politics both have to be weighed against each other. Do you think the world is now coming to a point where it feels that, they have to invariably put a stop to this atrocity, whereas they've watched it unabated for a while now?
Mahrukh, thank you for having me on the show. First of all, Mahrukh, this war on Gaza has, there was a myth that was busted with this war in Gaza. There's no democracy in the world. There's no human rights champions. They have all failed. All those people who spoke for, all those countries who spoke for human rights, they have failed right now in Gaza. They seem to be helpless, or rather, I would say, they seem to be in this crime. They seem to be involved in this crime with them. And the way that Israel has been carrying out things with impunity, that is so alarming for the future world. How are we going to shape all the world now? The question is that Gaza is over there. It's burning right now. People are dying day night, day out. The interesting fact I would share over here with you, Mahrukh, is that to understand Gaza, it's around 42 kilometers long and 10 to 12 kilometers wide, with 2 million people living over there. If you compare it with Islamabad is 3 times Gaza, with a population of 1.2 million, and Gaza has 2 million people. So every time a bomb drops over there, there's a chance. It's a highly densely populated area. So every time a bomb drops over there, it's a highly chance that more people will die. And that is what is happening since last 6 months. And then we see a criminal silence from everyone. So majority of the states, what they're doing is they're just condemning them. There was a resolution passed in United Nations, which was blocked by the veto power of countries that are known for being champions of democracy, and it's a sad state over there.
Fair enough. Taiba, as far as overall America, a country like America is concerned, really, it's the only country that holds that kind of clout, that kind of power that can make a difference.
Yeah.
Do you think the politics, its relationship with Israel, its relationship overall will override this humanitarian cause? Of course, their own domestic situation as far as elections are concerned are also a cause for concern now, because so many civilians are supporting Israel.
Yeah, but I think
Palestine, sorry.
Yeah, but I think no, it is going to take time, because if we go and listen to the interviews of Biden, I think this is not going to make a difference right now. And if like US claims that Israel has the right of self-defense, but no, according to the UN Charter 51, Article 51, we see that no, Israel has no right to claim the self-defense. So we have to see that we need another international humanitarian action or committee that literally implements and enforces international laws for human rights. Because if UN General Assembly has 5 permanent members and one is going to veto it, who is going to stop the war crimes? Who is going to
You're
stop
saying that
them?
Perhaps a rethink in the rules and the laws themselves is needed. Bakas, is it, we have for a while thought that the laws are arbitrary. And this crisis itself has exposed that, in an unflinching way, because clearly they have the way that the veto happened, abstaining also we've seen. Do you think, but then the question is, are they ever going to be changed? Are they ever going to be amended? Because the people that control it will never want it.
See, but then there are repercussions to it.
Okay.
If you see global institutions, particularly, I mean, when we all talk about United Nations Security Council resolutions, and particularly if you see the resolution which came and demanding for ceasefire, and it didn't happen. The problem right now is that, of course, there's a lot of criticism. If you see, there have been Human Rights Council adding so many clauses and covenants and conventions on human rights protection and all that, but states did not pay heed to it. And over the period of time, they have been adding like UPR, Universal Periodic Review of the countries, giving a lot of reports and all these things. But the sad part is that the governmental mechanisms didn't ensure that much implementation with true letter and spirit. Now, when it comes, see, that's a fundamental challenge. When you start ignoring, keeping human rights at back, and your economy, your political interest take the center stage, long term there are problems that it can create a bigger complex conflict. Right now what happened, I personally see that, this might not be restricted to Palestine and Israel, the way the situation is engulfing. The problem is such deficit of human rights, such deficit of justice, and calling spade a spade could open the possibilities of more disruption, which is problematic. So if you think that we need a world which is based on justice and have a just order, you have to empower these forums. Now, of course, there is a structural problem, and there has been a lot of debate on that. That power of vetoes, and then of course your economy and your relationships generally, and the division on the blocks. I guess that's something which is causing a lot of problem in the world. There's always greater polarization. If you see right now in the world, what happened with Russia, Ukraine. If you see Iran giving a lot of statements to Israel and Middle East, and everywhere, if you see, there are chances, and we see the indicators and indications of problems and more complex issues and conflict, Syria and other. So I guess this is an outcome of such weak institutions where rule of law was not implemented, where human rights violations were committed, and the international community and the international institutions didn't abide by or trust the nations. I mean, right now I strongly believe that US has that power and clout which it can exert to at least stop this war, have push for ceasefire, and then allow humanitarian workers to go in, allow access to the media. Of course, understandably, the level of destruction is so much that
they can't really, the optics of it would mean disaster.
Exactly.
For anyone who supports Israel, not only Israel.
Exactly. So that's understandably, because the level of the destruction occurred there and the cause there, it's difficult to hide, and particularly even that came to us through non-traditional media particularly. So I guess sooner or later they have to come on that. I guess a lot of thinking in US is that they are more into the changing the expecting a change in the government in Israel, and then maybe with the new government they could be able to handle and talk. But I guess it's very necessary right now if we push for this and see. The idea is that if you want to strengthen the international bilateral and multilateral institutions, the problem with this is that it gets into more complex.
And of course, there are invariably interests at play of every nation. For us, there is, as far as the domestic situation within the US is concerned, what's your take on this? I mean, as far as the elections, as far as the Biden administration is concerned, isn't it under fire for what's happening in Israel to a huge extent by its own people?
Mahrukh, let me just add a few points to my fellow guest over here. He said about UN and all these things. I totally agree with him. The problem is the UN, US, and every country has condemned Russia and Ukraine conflict as well. But what happened? There were sanctions on Russia, but what result did it bring? Did Russia stop? Then we talk about India and Kashmir. There were resolutions on Kashmir issue as well. There were condemnations over there for Kashmir as well. But did anything change? I think the overall structure for UN, the thing that came into existence, a body that came into existence after World War II, and the whole concept was to stop wars, and it was very effective till let's say 80s, 90s. But right now, at this point, it seems like a UN is just a rubber stamp. It just gives a condemnation, and the nations who are part of it, they don't follow it. They just don't bat an eye on it. And Russia-Ukraine conflict, Kashmir issue, then the latest one, Gaza Strip, That is one of the most highlighted problems over there. It's a very evident that we need to change the whole system. There needs to be a change in this UN system, how it conducts things.
But the question is again, what I asked Waqas also, the question is the people that invariably are responsible for changing things are the ones that are the beneficiaries there. So how is it possible? How does one, ever envisage things changing in that regard?
You see, Mahrukh, someone who is beneficiary would definitely not go and change the things which do not suit them. It's the countries and the world which are not beneficiary to it. They have to come together. The other member states, they have to come together and they have to think above their own interest. Definitely the countries with the veto power cannot sit down and they would never want to cut down their powers. It's obvious. The countries that don't have power, that have been on the receiving end of the bad things, they need to come together and they need to change the system. They have to stand up and they need to think over it. How things, because if it's Gaza right now, it's Ukraine, it's Kashmir, it could be any country later on. Any country can invade a country and they can easily get away with it.
Taiba, of course, any country could be at the behest of it. As far as uniting between those countries who don't maybe have the power but collectively can make a difference, do you see that on the cards, or do you think politics is always going to be supreme?
I think politics is going to be supreme, and because now it has been 6 months since October 7, we see that, Gaza is, facing devastating attacks. Infrastructure is being developed, devastated. So now we have to see that who is going to win? Is politics going to win, or collective power to stop the Western powers, to stop the US, or to stop the aids that is being provided to Israel? Who is going to stop them? So I think no, the politics is going to take part, and it is a decades of trauma for Palestinian people.
Of course.
And we have to see it is going to take years to recover. So I think politics will take a part.
But do you think it's going to be, but where does the buck stop? That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Is it going to result in complete demolition? Because so many people have died. There is no equity, there is no equality here, there is no scale on which one can condemn it, because it's clearly off the scales.
Okay, there is one problem. Our civilians, the people inside the state do have empathy, but the leaders are focusing on their own political interests.
So that's what I'm saying, the politics of it as nations are, historically for us, have always overridden, humanitarian causes, unfortunately. That's also a fact. Isn't that true, Waqas?
I guess it is true, but partly we can see also the role of countries like South Africa. I guess we have to reimagine maybe. The problem right now is we know the issues, we know what has happened to them. Condemnation is part of it, of course. People are doing, civil society is doing, international, the very known voices are doing it, but the problem is it's not creating any space for them. It's not creating more space for the humanitarian aid. It's not giving access to the media. It's not giving access to the other things. The other political issue is far something, but at least immediate emergency relief and all that thing, it's not happening. But of course you have to see what could be done in possible avenues and what is the possibility right now.
What is the possibility?
So countries like South Africa who came, they went there in ICJ, I guess there could be the like-minded people, there could be countries, those need to expand their ambit and constituency based on the fundamental principle of human rights. South Africa has a background of course, Madiba.
I think Taiba mentioned that perhaps we need another body. Do you think there's place for such a body? Because of course UN in this case has failed, one has to acknowledge. The rules are also in a sense arbitrary. Of course.
The idea is, it's of course a long debate, but if we see in the context of Palestine right now, I guess that's where we need to see that how to strengthen the existing mechanisms, or how to make it more strengthened and effective for the Palestinians. Of course they are victims, they are oppressed, they are in a situation where they can't do anything more, but we, I guess those who believe on the just cause of human rights, and particularly civil society, academicians, intellectuals, they all need to see that how that constituency could be enhanced, how they can put a lot of pressure, and see, apparently you see that there is, things are not moving. I know it's very painful to see the distractions, but I guess there's also some ground covered there. There are a lot of pressure within Israel on Netanyahu if you see the protest going on. If there is a lot of pressure to the political government within US as well, there is a lot of pressure those are supporting on that. I guess that mounting pressure should be there. That could create some spaces. See the problem after, if you see from last decade or more, the peace constituencies across the globe have literally reduced. The politics of hate, politics of incitement, politics of division has taken the center stage from there. The time is there to invest more on peace constituencies. You have to lobby, you have to bring the civil society, you have to bring the people with more these global values of freedom, justice. Of course, this is a legitimacy case, test case for the international organizations, institutions.
There's no doubt about the fact that this is clearly a test case, but the question is that test case, we're clearly failing.
I agree. In the long term, of course, there has to be some institutional reforms, maybe coming up with a new body with a new set of rules. But right now, in the context of Palestine, I guess we need to push more with the existing resources, with the existing mechanism, and see how things can change.
Faraz, what about institutional reforms, which is what Makas is talking about? Can we agitate to, jointly the countries that do support Palestine towards institutional reforms or another body that is perhaps not so arbitrarily, aligned, like we've seen at this time as far as Palestine and Israel situation is concerned?
Well, Mahrukh, as I said earlier, the UN needs to be, there needs to be a redo for the whole thing. The rules and regulations, the member states, the power, and everything has to be redecided with the recent events. It's not just only Gaza. There has been a lot of things going on in the last previous decade or so. And UN has been just, bystander. They're just watching things. And anyone with the single veto power can just let go of things and get away with it. The more important question, Mahrukh, I would like to bring to the panel, what worries me is the misconception in the general public that we should send troops there, or any country, OIC should start sending troops over there. The question is, can we do that? Is it possible to do this? Will this conflict, does the general public know that the conflict can go into a whole World War III type of situation if we start doing that? This is something that general public needs to understand, Mahrukh, that we cannot just send our troops, or any country cannot do that.
Right, but I think militarily, perhaps agitating or interfering is not an option for Pakistan.
Definitely. Yes, it's not just for Pakistan, it's not for any country.
For a lot of other countries also, I think. But the question is, in terms of options, then there are very limited ones on the table. Isn't that true?
And I think the options that there are on the table, OIC, UAE just condemned Israel. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, every country, OIC included, all the Muslim countries, Pakistan especially, has been condemning them. We cannot put sanctions on them, definitely. And the countries that can, they did put sanctions on Israel as well, related to trade and other things. But this is the max that people can do. We're boycotting things. We cannot just. What I want to highlight over here is that this general perception with the public and social media especially, that why can't we go and have a full-fledged military intervention over there? That's not possible. This is something that we need to talk about as well when it comes to Gaza and Israel. Whatever can be done staying within the limits is being done by the government of Pakistan and OIC and Saudi Arabia and all these Muslim countries.
As far as Taiba, within the situation, as far as of course the Islamic countries is concerned, or Pakistan is concerned, or countries that support Israel is concerned, as I said, that there are limited options on the table. We are doing what we can, but we have a very limited ambit within which we can exercise that kind of help also. For the world to take notice, really, it's about the US or countries that matter. But do you think that overall there has been a change? I mean, from the start, when we look at the veto and then abstaining, whether it's gradual, whether it's little, whether it's about, a drop in the ocean, there seems to be a change because of the outcry that's enormous.
If we see at non-traditional social media, we can say that yes, awareness is increasing on this issue. But Mahrukh, there is a very complex debate that who is going to stop this, because we have limited options. So first of all, I would like to agree with Faraz that he said right that this is completely an emotional decision to intervene there with military, or military intervention is an emotional decision. But now we need to see, because of the humanitarian loss, because of the emotional devastation, we have to see that the debate has gone so far from the Muslim and religion debate. Now this is a more sort of humanitarian debate, and who is going to stop the imposed starvation that is being used as a weapon of a war there. So I think yes, the awareness is increasing, and the most positive part of it is that it is increasing through different handles of Twitter, and people are uploading the actual situation there instead of believing on disinformation.
Right, fair enough. Waqas, is it disinformation an option? Because initially we saw, as far as the media is concerned, there was some disinformation that was quickly rebutted. And like you said, the access of the media, of course, is limited, but the social media and the role that they have played in bringing this crisis to the fore is, cannot be emphasized enough also.
True, but see, in the beginning I said the war of truth actually has won by Palestinians.
Yes.
Now it's very painful, I know, given the situation over there. But when we talk about the mechanisms and possible ways, I guess it's where right now for a short term, I guess, there are many options with the countries. It's not that things are totally, we are at a place where there is no space to move. I guess countries like OIC, countries of a better ties with the US, countries with those who champion, and particularly EU countries having good record of human rights and justice and liberal values, I guess they need to push more. One can lobby with them. Idea is, let's suppose this International Court of Justice given 6 points to the Israel to follow, to avoid genocide, to give the access to the humanitarian aid and all that. And largely Israel has failed that. And if it failed that, of course, it's sort of committing the genocide and all that. There are clauses, there are laws. It's not that it's totally unaccountable. We know it's a war situation right now. This is difficult because people want an urgent emergency response to that situation. I guess a multi-pronged strategy should be there, at least to have a ceasefire there, to have an access to the aid workers. And third, of course, you cannot forget these all distractions. I mean, the post-conflict stress disorders and traumas, if you would see, there is another huge story. I mean, the Palestinians would have thing to tell to the world that what has actually happened to them and how they are traumatized and how they have inflicted the pain that won't go until centuries. I don't think so. This is good for the center voices within Israel, those who want to who understood the value of democracy and liberalism. For the short term, I mean, right now, if you see one more thing, they're trying to go into Rafah because that's a continuous expectation and people are continuously resisting them not to go there. I guess people, at least on the first instance, should prevent them entering there, going and bombarding there because there's a huge population is there. And second, of course, gradually things could be done. But role of OIC, very central, role of EU, particularly very central, and role of international civil society also based on their values is very important. I guess this on the one side it's a failure of international institutions, there is no doubt on that, but on the other side there is a grim hope that at least people from the different walks of the society are resisting their governments, challenging them, and look, this is not good, and this would have a long-term impact in their politics as well.
For us, as far as, of course, we've talked about the atrocities, we've talked about the fact that the damage is limitless. As far as the damage is concerned, as far as aid is concerned, do you think that, even with regard to aid, we've seen a kind of attitude, we talk about ceasefire or we talk about humanitarian pause to continue where the injuries, where the infliction of course bombs and all of that situation to continue. And the way that humanitarian organizations have come forward in that regard, what is your view of this? Because we've been unable to stop that also, and to have that kind of the free flow of aid that is needed, the free flow of food, the humanitarian essentials that are needed there.
The situation of the aid over there, the humanitarian aid over there is very, very bleak right now, very bad. It's not that people around the world are not trying to do that. It's the Israel that is stopping it. Israel controls all ins and outs of Gaza Strip. And that is why they're stopping you. You've seen videos and you've seen news from there where Israelis, the far right from the Zionism party, the one that has been in government with Netanyahu right now, the people who support the Zionism party, they are actually stopping the aid with their own bodies. They're just lying over there in front of the trucks, and they're making sure that the aid does not go over there. But as far as the international community is concerned, OIC, Saudi Arabia, they've already pledged, Saudi Arabia has already pledged $50 million for the restructuring of Gaza once they stop. So first of all, this has to stop, and then the aid will flow in. And for that aid, we need to make sure with bilateral. See, Mahrukh, once if you go a few years back, when different Muslim countries started recognizing Israel as a state, we thought that ultimately this whole situation will calm down now, and there will be an end to this madness by Israel. But that did not help. That did not help at all. The madness continued. So the Muslim world especially needs to think they need to think out of the box. They need to come down to something where they can settle down a peaceful life for the people living, the Muslims living over there, or the people in general living in Gaza or West Bank as well. If we talk about Gaza, we just forget about West Bank. West Bank has the same similar situation over there. There's a humanitarian crisis over there as well. It's just been overshadowed by Gaza right now. So humanitarian aid is being pledged by Saudi Arabia, OIC, and that will increase.
Taiba, do you think even the aftermath of this, the way that the world, the generational trauma that we are looking at as far as Israel is concerned, as far as Palestine is concerned, being inflicted by Israel, do you think, there's any end to this? What will it mean for those generations to come? What will it mean for the world to come? It'll be a changed kind of world, and I think one has to acknowledge that also.
We need to see what happened after World War II. What changed? We made international organizations to stop war crimes. Then what happened? So people, apart from focusing on political agendas, focusing on economies, people are going to forget it. Let's be honest. I don't think so there is going to be like a significant change, but I think the people inside the state, those who are not leaders, are going to remember it, and it is going to be remembered in the history that an illegal occupation went so far that we were unable to stop it because of foreign interventions, because of biasness of international organizations. If you call ICJ, if you call UN, and if we talk about UN, I would like to, as we agreed on South Africa, African state, if we are UN is representing the entire world's opinion, where is Africa there? There is not a single member of a permanent 5 seats. Africa is not there. So we need to see that we do have a equal representation, and we need a little bit of reform, that if 5 permanent members have not, like 4 of them have not vetoed on war crimes, and only 1 basic ally of Israel has vetoed, we must stop it. We should go for the majority, because it is not a simple thing to because war crime is something really serious. We need to see that hospitals, they are attacking hospitals, they are attacking infrastructure there, people are under the rubble, and we need to address these things. Who is going to, let's talk about it, like who is going to go there and provide them aid, because there is and the aid is having pork inside it. So who is going to address these issues? We need a serious debate on this to take action, because sorry to interrupt you, because I feel like laws are there, Mahrukh. who is going to enforce them? We need to, states need to combine to make them enforce these laws and to focus on, war crimes need sanctions. If we are focusing on Russia-Ukraine war and we are imposing sanctions on them, then what is wrong here? We need to address these biases.
The double standards,
Yeah.
I think those are, what Taiba says. Of course, the double standards of the world are right there in front of us. They are rampant, they exist, and this is the world we live in. Again, arbitrariness as far as the laws are concerned of the bodies that are aimed at protecting those very civilians is something that is an irony, and it's extremely ironic that those are the bodies that we as humans have made. Again, I think there's nothing else to say except that revisiting of the laws that govern these bodies is essential.
But just, see, before coming to the bodies, one aspect is that Palestinians would have a lot to tell and share with the world. This, you won't take it from their memories, you can't erase it.
Yes.
It's not merely politics or economy. It's about the lived experiences they have there when it comes to the trauma, when it comes to the gender, children. It's something very, very huge that would be a great burden on the conscience of Netanyahu's government. One. The other problem is the more consolidation, more rigid and more belligerent attitude of Netanyahu government when even it denies the two-state solution. That, I guess, world need to understand and press more on that. It's not possible that without, with every passing day losing allies, he could resist for that long time. It's not possible. He has his own political compulsions back home. So I guess this mounting pressure, he would give in, of course, concede something. That's one point. Second, when you talk about the international institutions and reforms and all that, we need to see this, may it be Human Rights Council, may it be General Assembly, United Nations Security Council and all that. This is not in isolation. This is the bodies represented by countries, and of course countries have their politics. And I guess they should lobby more and work on more towards promoting the laws they have made. Like on this war situation, the Genocide Convention, the Geneva Convention particularly of 1949 and others, I guess these are the countries, those who have passed, and they should be upholding it. History has seen that if you leave the conflicts unattended, there are multiple consequences. Palestine was left unattended. It has now consequences. And these consequences can go beyond the borders of Palestine. It has always the potential. You have the Kashmir here.
Yes, right before us, and we haven't seen.
It's almost 70 plus years unattended conflict. Doesn't mean that with doing away of Article 370 would solve it. It doesn't happen. It continuously creates the complex mechanisms of resistance, of maybe rebelling against the occupation, and then they are not under control of any, the center voices and all that. So I guess the world must realize that enough has been done.
Yes.
We need to work towards more collaborative arrangements where the justice, freedom and equality and the global values should prevail.
And I think that's why we have a country like South Africa taking a stand this way, because they've seen it.
Yes,
they've
and
seen apartheid.
Because of the legacy of Madiba, Nelson
Yes,
Mandela,
exactly.
they could do that.
They've seen the
Yes.
inhumanity, the barbarity, the apartheid, the overall trauma that they have suffered
True.
for generations.
True.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, Faraz, but I'd like your comments before we close.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to it. Mahrukh, you said the future generation, what Gaza people will be seeing in future. There's this three parts to it. One, the physical disability with the war-hit people. That is something that will leave them on humanitarian aids for the lifelong thing. The children have a trauma, but the most important part is the kids that will come. The women that are pregnant right now are there. The kids, they're malnutritioned, and even with malnutritioned, the offspring, the kids that will be born now will be a big burden on them as well. There's a lot of problem with this war that will leave effects for the Gaza people for the decades to come. No, and nobody's talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it, and even those people who are talking about it and the trauma, it doesn't seem to be having any effect, unfortunately. That's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us, Taiba Razak. Thank you for being with us. Waqas Ali, thank you for joining us today. Faraz Ali Khan, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, as we sit here today and talk about the trauma, the atrocities that the people of Palestine continue to experience every day, the futility of this conversation does not escape us. The futility of our continual talk, continual empathy at this time with the people of Palestine is unfortunately also a reality. We hope that the world will unite. We hope that humanity will prevail over politics that we are seeing in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.